How about a web UI that shows you all container interfaces on your Containerlab host and allows you to understand how nodes are connected one with the other and allows you to start sniffing the packet captures from any of the available interfaces, all from the comfort of your browser. It's that easy to install, free, and open source. Sounds like a wish list for Santa, right? But it's actually a real project, Edgeshark. Let's dig into it. Yesterday, when I shared the video about the Containerlab and Wireshark integration, you guys went ballistic. Lots of likes, lots of shares, and lots of interesting comments. The problem was that the pcopysh script that I presented is really nice and easy when you need to work with a tiny lab and you know the nodes and interfaces that you want to connect to and sniff traffic from. So this is how the script looks like, right? You have to know the address of your VM. This is probably not going to vanish anyway. You have to have this address somehow in your memory. But you also need to know the node name that you would like to sniff traffic from and a particular interface that sits in this network node. And these two are not so easy to remember. You have to keep in mind, you have to keep this mental map in your head. And imagine if you have a bigger lab. Would it be that easy to remember the node names and the interface names? Probably not. Yesterday, I went to read the comments that you left to my LinkedIn announcements. And one of the comments was, great contribution, thanks. I'm using Edgeshark. It allows us to access and manage captures from web UI. And initially, I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting, but I didn't start immediately dig into it. But then 2 hours later, these thoughts started to bug me, and I decided to finally start Googling what Edgeshark is. And apparently, this project comes from Siemens, and it allows to do magics. I really liked it, and once I made it work on my machine, I can definitely say I will use it. It allows to visualize the communication of containers on your system. And when you project it to Containerlab setting, that is kind of your web UI for Wireshark. And although the project does more things than just exposing the web UI to you for your Wireshark captures, within the Containerlab setting, that is exactly what we want. So to reiterate, we will use the same lab with 2 clients and 2 SR Linux nodes. Clients will be able to ping one another, and we will use different encapsulation modes on client interfaces, like .1q tag, no tag, double tag, and we would like to see those frames with Wireshark to kind of double check that the tagging is working as expected. The lab is simple, and it's really easy to spin it up. I already have it running on my machine, and I would like to show you how you can integrate Edgeshark to your Containerlab hosts. But before we do that, let's take a look at the diagram that explains how Edgeshark integrates with Containerlab. This is how you typically have your setup done. You have your laptop, a personal computer where you have Wireshark installed for all the intents and purposes. Then you have this wild network that connects you to your Containerlab host. On the Containerlab host, you have your labs running, right? You have nodes packed neatly into containers. They're connected with virtual Ethernet pairs. And you would like to sniff traffic from these interfaces between the nodes. You want to see what is flowing between the nodes. Now, how you do that? With Edgeshark, you install with Docker Compose the Edgeshark service. And Edgeshark starts to talk to different container backends, Podman, Docker, Containerd, and also listen or inspect the network namespaces that you have on your system to show you the picture of your networking setup on your host, including container interfaces. So let's see how it's done. If I go back to my terminal, and this is my VM that runs Containerlab, and I have this VLAN lab running, how do I install Edgeshark? This is actually very easy. Edgeshark is containerized, so all you need to do is to invoke a Docker Compose. And since we're already using Docker for Containerlab, this is already included. You don't have to install Docker Compose. It's already part of the Docker distribution. Now, this particular command comes from the documentation side. So we included the Edgeshark integration documentation to our portal. So you will have all those commands and the explanations neatly stored on containerlab.dev. And to install, I just copied this command, which basically curls the compose file from Edgeshark repository and starts it up in a daemon mode. So let me run it. Now, Edgeshark is starting, and it's already started. It's really lightweight service. There's no heavy backend stuff happening here. Very lightweight, written in Go, love it. It's already running in my system. How do I use it? If I go back to my web application, the Chrome browser, and I open the address of my Containerlab host and the 5001 port that Edgeshark exposes once we started the service, I will get to see the picture of my networking connections on the Containerlab web host. So check this out. This is the namespace for the systemd processor, PID1, and I see my bridges. I see my Tailscale interface that is the sponsor of the connectivity to my node. I also have the CLab bridge. This is where my nodes, my Containerlab nodes are connected. You see these VETH pairs, they lead to my nodes, the lab nodes that I run. If I scroll back, I start to see my containers. I start to see my client 1, client 2, SRL1, SRL2. These are the components of my lab, right? Just to show you here. These are the nodes that I'm running on my machine. These 4 containerized nodes. I see them here. And what's even cooler, if I check on the interface lines here, and this, you see it's coming from Siemens. It's like the infrastructure Ethernet diagram, which I absolutely love. Kudos to them. Well, if I click on the interfaces, I see where each of those endpoints are connected. And this link means here, this is the virtual Ethernet pair, so it's point-to-point connectivity, and that is exactly how I stitch my client to SRL2. Let's rather talk about client 1. So I have my ETH1 interface, and look at that. All of the VLAN sub-interfaces, they are neatly stored under the ETH1. So ETH1 10 with VLAN ID 10, and it's showed here. It's all auto-discovered. I didn't really touch any of these diagrams. This is what you get when you first connect to the Edgeshark UI. This is all you get. So you don't have to type anything. It's all auto-discovered and presented to you. So I can see that my VLAN ID 11 is also part of the ETH1, but that part really amazes me. The double tagged interface, ETH1.12.13, is nested under ETH1.12, and then it is nested under ETH1. So this diagram really shows how your interfaces are mapped one to another. And as I said, this is also kind of the service discovery diagram if you want. So if I look at the SRL1 container, this is my SRL Linux switch, they're connected back to back together with interface ETH10. This is this part, right? This is my interswitch link. And this is shown here as well. So if I look at the E110 interface, it shows me that this is the link that connects the 2 switches together. All right, sweet. Now let's try and start packet capture. To start the packet capture, all you need to do is really click on this fin link. That is all there is to it. So if I click here, my browser says there is a URL that you need to launch an application for, and there is an Edgeshark handler app that I have installed on my Mac. And if I click this one, I see my Wireshark immediately popping up, and I should see some packets flowing here. Now, because I do not push any traffic, there is nothing so far. But what we can do is that we can go to a terminal, connect to the client, and start pinging 10.1.0.2. And if we go back to the Wireshark, the ICMPs are there. It is as easy as that, right? So if I close the link, quit without saving, and I go back to my web UI, if I go to ETA client 1 and select this interface, for example, start capture, Wireshark opens up, and the magic happens. I see my ICMPs. The Edgeshark runs in a daemon mode, so I don't have to touch it. I don't have to stop it. I don't have to restart it whenever I want to build a new lab and start looking at those interfaces. The auto discovery thing that you see here, the auto refresh interval, will automatically detect new containers. What do I mean by that? If I go back and stop this capture, go back to my telemetry lab, and I start a new lab. This is the telemetry lab that has Prometheus, Grafana, Claw topology, all the shebang. Now, once this lab is running, if I go to my web UI again, you see we have now way more links. Why is that? That is because we started a new lab and Edgeshark automatically detected it. It understands or listens to the Docker backend and sees those containers starting up. So now you see there's a ST bridge created by the lab that we just run, because we are using a different Docker network for the streaming telemetry lab. And you see there are way more nodes and containers there. So if I scroll all the way back, I should see leaves. And if I start sniffing on the leaf link like this is my uplink to a claw fabric on the turtle leaf. If I open it up, there's going to be some traffic happening. Oh yeah, you see, so there's TCP, there's telemetry collection happening. There are some things that are in motion, but I can look at it. I can filter it. I can stop. So yeah, usual Wireshark things. I don't need you to tell you how to work with Wireshark. But the quality of life improvement that Edgeshark brings to your table is massive, right? You get to see all the interfaces that you have in your lab. You get to see all the connections between the interfaces in your lab. And this is like an observability tool, more or less. Really useful. And it is running unattended. Start it once, leave it be with your Containerlab host if you have your Containerlab host running for some decent time. And you will be able to use it anytime you want to connect to it. Huge kudos to Siemens. Amazing project. I will definitely use it a lot in my demonstrations and workshops. It makes it so much easier to capture the traffic from the nodes. And we all know that seeing the packets flowing in the Wireshark is the best kind of proof of concept or proof of everything when it comes to the networking. Happy labbing, and do check Edgeshark integration. See you.